Hi, I'm Jennifer Wright. I'm a pianist and composer living in Portland, Oregon. Here I am in my home because it's COVID times and we're zooming in. So here I am to tell you a little bit about what I do. I started as a classically trained pianist. I have 2 degrees in classical piano, and sort of came to composition in my 30s, discovering that I had stories that I wanted to tell that felt really authentic to me, other music. And it actually became a path that led me to finding out that what I really wanted to do is interpret myself and the world and how I see the world. And composition is the vehicle through which I do that. I also produce a lot of events and create artistic, cultural happenings, and I love to teach, and it all kind of works together into this beautiful, colorful artistic lifestyle. And composition is very near and dear to my heart. That lets me tell the stories of the world as I experience it, and reach other people that way.
I'm Nancarrow. I'm a fiber artist. I'm currently living in Fairbanks, Alaska, but spent 50 some years just outside Denali Park. I have never had much background in music, and the opportunity to learn more about music and to respond to different kinds of music has been a really special thing for me.
Hi, I'm Susan Campbell, and I've been a 32-year resident of Fairbanks, Alaska. I've been a teacher most of my adult life, an artist and a poet, and I came to this project with feeling great privilege to be in a collaboration with other artists and musicians that were responding to a place that I have spent quite a bit of time down in Denali Park. In 2017, I was an artist in residence there.
Being in Denali was a really magical experience, absolutely a life-changing experience. I love nature, and I find it to be absolutely restorative and healing, and it's a place of refuge. It's a place where I go for inspiration and to sort out all the things that get tangled up in your head when you're in modern society and you feel disconnected from nature. I think it's the most dangerous thing that we all face, is being disconnected from nature. And this ability to go and spend days on end living in the depths of the wilderness with the vastness of creation around you and surrounded by experts who also lived and worked in Denali and could explain what they were so excited about their research, and what the deep connection they felt was with the different elements of the landscape, from the macro to the absolute micro. It was a really amazing and illuminating experience. And it works really well with my feeling about musical composition, which to me is a very sacred act. And I don't necessarily compose lots and lots of pieces because I feel that each one has to be a really special story. There has to be a real imperative behind writing it. So to go to Denali and experience the vastness and the ancient feel of the landscape was a really spiritually changing experience for me. To be immersed in that landscape and that atmosphere and that sense of timelessness. It made me feel like the only thing that I could write when I was there was something that would express a feeling of the creation of this truly sacred place. And in my short time there, I spent as much time as I could understanding some of the indigenous legends of the creation of these areas, the mountains, the raven character, who is the shapeshifter, who took on many forms. And they were so inspiring to me. And I feel like in some ways they explain the world better than science does, or somehow they come together with science to make a very perfect union that somehow can feed our mental understanding, but also our soul, our need to understand these things on a elemental human level. So the piece I wrote, which is called "From the Darkness We Sing the Mighty Land into Being," was written for bass clarinet and Alaskan frame drum. It was written for bass clarinet, alto flute, and Alaskan frame drum. And we were very, very fortunate to be able to obtain a beautiful Alaskan frame drum made by Harold Northway, who is a song maker, a sacred position in any tribal society. And I have it. I should have brought it out today. Maybe I can bring it out later and show you. And so the feeling that I wanted from this piece is the feeling of before anything existed, and then the first sounds come out of the void. And I was especially inspired by the idea that the forces of nature are absolutely on display in Denali. The subduction of one tectonic plate under another, and the pushing up of mountains, and the washing down of erosion to create these massive landscapes. I imagined these three forces as three titans or gods that would together start singing in the darkness and create the landscape into being. And that those are the sounds that I was going for, very non-traditional sounds, singing and humming and huffing into the instruments, and body percussion of all sorts. The original version even contained musicians, tapping on each other and thumping on each other's backs to invigorate the breath even further. So it's not sounds that you would normally hear in a very typical chamber music composition, but something much more raw that would capture the elemental essence of Denali itself.
So for me, Jennifer, your inspiration and your feeling being in Denali, feeling that spiritual space was so resonant with me. I've spent quite a bit of time hiking and traveling in Denali and other places in the interior, and that sense, that deep sense of the massiveness of this landscape and the spirit in that landscape was so evocative to me as a writer and as a visual artist. And so to take your idea, your inspiration, which you shared with us about this intersection of myth and science, that they can coexist to try to give life to the magic of this landscape, that was very evocative to me. And so I wrote a poem to try to express what I was feeling about my time in Denali and that sense of the singing, the land being brought to life by these forces, these elemental forces that you described, but also this spirit that is behind them. And so I constructed, I usually make artist books, and what I created was a box construction that the poem I wrote nests in a window along with artifacts that I did not collect in Denali, but that could be found there: a piece of granite, some birch twigs, some bone, some porcupine quills. And I shaped those in these little miniature windows to try to be a metaphor for that, the small, giving a visual image of the grandeur of the big, and that by looking at some ordinary thing that you might think is ordinary, a stone or a twig, that having it arranged together in a reverent way would support that feeling that you describe in your music. And I loved the Athabascan drum, that repeated pattern moving through the land. But for me, the spirit of the place that we listen to, that we hear it in our bones, was very evocative. So thank you. And I love that you wrote those notes on your score. So when you sent Ree and I your score, your actual musical score, and I'm not a musician, so I don't read music, but I loved seeing your notations, like that the Titans were singing and the stars were getting arrayed and the earth and the moon were getting placed in the sky. And yeah, that was very evocative. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking so beautifully about it. I feel that music it's a story. Everything that we do is a story, and the oldest thing in that of importance to humanity is storytelling. Since the dawn of time, we've had this human need to gather around a fire and tell stories. It's what binds us together. And I think we need that more in this time than ever, and this connection to feeling that we are part of something larger than ourselves, and something that we should nurture and protect and pass along to the next generations. I think this is becoming lost. And if more people had the opportunity to spend time in places like Denali and really sit and be quiet and just be, then we wouldn't be so tangled up.
I was very struck by the fact that your piece was telling a story, and I had to listen to it very many times. It was a piece of music unfamiliar to me, and in order to understand it. And my piece reads as a canvas telling the story from left to right. And I saw the look that's on the score, the silence, and then gradual sounds coming in, as a going from very primitive to the society as we have it now. So the primitive elements that I've used, the little microbes that are down in the corner, the open flat landscape, the open flat landscape without any kind of vegetation. And then over time, that landscape changed. And as it became more diverse, the music became more diverse. There were more different musical instruments that were used. It was very, it changed from high to low, and it just brought you into this whole feeling of the development of what we have on Earth at this time. It was a very big learning experience for me, and one that I was very, very happy to be involved in.
It was so exciting to me to see what was created. It's very common for a musician to see pieces of artwork and feel inspired by that, whether it's Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition, very literal, so, oh, I saw this and it inspired me and I am now creating a musical sentiment based on that. Really, really common also in film scoring or anything else where you start with a visual cue and then think what would be a great soundtrack to that, which often puts the soundtrack in a secondary role of importance because we are so visually attuned in the world. So most of our stimulation we bring in visually, and a lot of people don't respond to sounds very much. So it was really interesting to have the backwards way around, where the music was created and then presented to you. That was something that I had never had the opportunity to do. And so I was waiting, I couldn't wait to see what you created, and then to see these absolutely personal expressions. Your quilt and your storybox couldn't be more different, but I felt they were intensely personal. And just, I certainly saw you as artists being expressed through there, but to see how you responded to those elemental sounds that were so unique, that are not, a straight up piece of music. You could say, that's lovely, I would put that on during dinner. But of course, I don't tend to write music like that. I create something that creates a space for you to be taken out of your normal world.
Well, I work in fabric, and so that becomes my palette, these fabrics. So the only way that I could approach this was to pull pieces that I have designed, painted, silkscreened in the past, and put them up on the wall and see what was closest to the feelings that I had. I had some pieces on hand that could start to tell the story, from these very primitive beginnings to things that are much more complicated. But then I found that I had to make new fabrics in order to enhance what was going on. And it was a very interesting development, making fabrics, listening to the music again, deciding if that is what depicted what I thought the story was telling at that point in time.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you created actual textiles to put in that. That's quite remarkable.
Absolutely.
I mean, the fabric of creation. How perfect is that?
Exactly.
Wow, wonderful. Wow, really amazing.
And what you said, Jennifer, about the music, Ree and I have talked about this during this whole project, that I'll speak for myself. I am not a musician. And so to listen to your music in a very innocent way without having any background, we have music in our lives, but I don't have any training in it. So to just come to the music innocently and just listen to it and have a feeling of it, and then reading what you said and bring that to it. I mean, it was a challenge at the beginning because I felt like, oh, wait, I don't know enough about music. But again, it was as an artist and a writer responding. And like Ree said, that we came to it in an innocent way, and it filled us and allowed us to share that part of ourselves in whatever medium we use in a new way and in response. And that was really evocative. So thank you for trusting us with that.
Well, thank you for being up for the challenge. I think what you described is absolutely the way that ultimately, if you have an open heart, that's how you're approaching any experience in your life. Anything new shouldn't necessarily represent the fear of the unknown. You can walk with confidence into the world and say, I will take this experience in, I will let it have its way with me. Whatever I will take from it is part of my journey. It's part of what I need to learn. And when we walk into Denali, it's the same. We don't necessarily understand what we're seeing, all the amazing processes that are happening, even though the land looks so still, all the intrigues and the little lives and the massive cosmic things that are going on there, the tectonic forces, things too small and too large for us to even comprehend as humans. We can't understand that. We can only understand how we are as we walk through this space, and we take ourselves with us, and that's the filter through which we see everything. So ultimately, there's no need to understand, we can't. And the more you understand about music, the more you might get tangled up in the wrong part of what's trying to be expressed. Just to take the story and see what it means to you at that moment is really where artistic communication, I feel, should be accessible to everyone. There's no barriers. Everyone can have that experience.
And that collaboration, our collaboration together with the music and the art, and now in this conversation over these few years when the show's been traveling, that we all wanted to honor exactly what you're saying. Ourselves as artists, you as a musician, and that space, Denali, the wilderness of it, that power of it, the stillness of it, and all that life force behind it. Yeah.
And I understand now how lucky I was to be able to go. And some folks have been able to return to composing in the wilderness and do it even more than once. And I absolutely see the attraction there. I think once you have an experience like that, and I've traveled and been in beautiful, beautiful, amazing nature situations many times. And every single time I go, it just makes me want to be further in that and have more and deeper connection with nature and beautiful places. It's so healing, and it's so important for all of us. And I feel like not everybody will be able to make it to Denali. And right now, nobody's traveling anywhere, and we're all craving nature, and we're craving so many things that nature can give us. But hopefully, as our exhibition travels around, people can really feel something of that magic through seeing these three things, and the poetry and the sort of totemic presentation of your so carefully, so beautifully considered arrangement. And then Ree's quilt, which is just, if you've ever thought quilt and thought you knew what a quilt was, to see a completely different fabric, storytelling fabric, like a great tapestry from the ancient times, just telling this incredible story with a soundtrack that they won't know what to do with potentially. That's wonderful. That gives them a space to understand something in a different way, and maybe understand something of what touched us. I feel good knowing that it's moving around.
During the show, there were people who came in to see the show at the opening, and the one I'm thinking of is in Anchorage. They went to find friends and bring them back so that they could come look at the show. And they talked about how they were going to be bringing friends because it was such a complete, unusual interpretation of all of that. They were very, very impressed with, being able to examine all these elements that aren't usually shown together.
Absolutely. It's magical when artists come together. It's one of my favorite things when different disciplines that usually don't come together, or you wouldn't think that they could possibly have any interaction. And then, of course, there always is. The artistic dialogue is always there. That's my favorite thing, is creating something that I haven't seen, that maybe the world hasn't seen, that gives us a space to not just do our normal thing. That art has to transport us, because we need to be transported. There's too much normal in the world, We need to create that space for ourselves. I do it primarily for me first, but if it can reach anybody and inspire them to want to then share it, I think we've done a good thing.
Mhm.